Let me ask you something. What happens when you build everything you thought you wanted and still feel like something is missing? Hmm. Not because you failed, but because success didn't fulfill you the way you expected it to. Today's conversation is not surface level motivation. This is about the tension between achievement and alignment, between fear and truth, and what it really takes to build a life that reflects who you are and not just what you do.
Welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments, the best growth mindset podcast recognized by Million Podcasts and ranked as a top mindset podcast by FeedSpot. We're proud to be in the top 1% on Listen Notes. Join Dr. Alisa Whyte as we explore powerful insights and strategies to elevate your mindset. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Mindset Mastery Moments. I am Dr. Alisa, your number one mindset disruptor. This space is where we challenge how you think, shift how you move, and we elevate how you show up in your life, your career, your purpose, and in everything you do. Because mindset isn't just what you think, it's truly how you live. And today we're going deep. Today's guest is someone who brings both real world success and real internal work to the table. I am speaking to Mr. Kris Land. He is an award-winning author, conscious entrepreneur, and spiritual teacher whose work challenges people to move through fear, reconnect with their inner truth, and build lives rooting in purpose. He's not just talking theory, he has lived it. Kris is a veteran CEO, a serial entrepreneur who has founded 12 high-impact companies with 11 success exits. Now that's boss move. And one IPO. And after decades of building externally, he spent over 30 years developing a deeper internal framework captured in his book called The Infinity Within, which explores fear, awakening, and what it really means to live in alignment. Kris, we are so excited. Let me tell you, I am triple excited because this is the kind of stuff I've been talking about in the last couple of months on my social media and in my own personal work. So meeting you is like meeting my ex superhero. Up, you got the big cape on. Tell us who you are in your own words, what you do, and why you do it.
Well, that's a big question. Thank you very much for having me here. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a technologist by trade.
Mm,
Grew up as a child as what would be considered a computer geek.
mm,
I was very fortunate that I built and sold my first company when I was 17. I had from the selling of that company, I entered into a kind of a deep depression, and from there wrote the notes and all the ideas of the construct that became the Infinity Within.
mm.
And just to take a short segue, I ended up hiring a ghostwriter because at that time I was not an author.
Right.
However, she kept wanting to make it her own story. So I ended up firing the ghostwriter and putting all my notes in a filing cabinet and just kind of leaving it there. And then as you mentioned, I started and then either merged or was acquired for 11 other companies, and one of them went IPO. And what was interesting is what I built, what the construct I operated from, what originally was going to be called the soul path or your soul path and became the Infinity Within was kind of the construct I've been operating on since the beginning. And it really gave me a clarity of a way of thinking and getting past fear and not getting stuck and dealing with complex situations. I mean, let's face it, anybody that's had a company or has worked in a large group of people are what make it interesting. They're also
Mm-hmm.
what make it challenging. So there's a lot of things that can stop us or hinder us from trying to move forward. And this construct that I ended up doing from the place of depression really helped me. So then fast forward to where I am now. I'm in Central Texas. I met my wife in San Diego. We have 3 younger boys, and I became an author about 4 or 5 years ago, writing a book series that I was very comfortable with, which is How to Build Your Dream Home. And
Mm,
the only reason I was comfortable with it is because for a long part of my life of being a technologist, my hobby was construction. And
mm.
so it was very easy for me to write that book, and it was received very well. It's our books, and it's been doing very well. And so that got me confident enough to write other books. And then my wife in the beginning of 25 said, your ideas around how life works and the soul works fundamentally helped me. She had a very difficult childhood. And
Mm.
she said, you have to finish this book. And so in the beginning of 25, took all my notes out of this filing cabinet from 40 plus years ago and sat down and finished the book and published it middle of last year. And I was very fortunate that over the last 6 months, 7 months, I've won 10 different awards across the world. And it's been getting phenomenal accolades. And so here we are today.
That's awesome. Sometimes timing is everything, right? Because 45 years ago, we didn't have this much global access to get the message out. So, and I think the timing is right more than ever before. I believe a lot of souls on the planet are seeking alignment and they need as much information and I would say diverse information from various perspectives so that we have as a collective the reflection of what would be most suited for us so we can choose and it's not just one way of thinking being and doing to get to where we want to go so first of all congratulations and
Thank you.
thank you for taking the time out to put it together and that's what we're going to get all into today. I'm going to get all in that brain of yours and that expertise and talk about some of the things you've covered in the book and then of course viewers and listeners you guys get to grab a copy wherever you are. So let me ask you something, Kris, if that's okay for me to call you Kris. What
Absolutely.
happens when you build everything you wanted and still feel like something's missing? And let me give you a little bit of context. Here's what I'm thinking, because a lot of people sometimes think they failed when when they build and then, or maybe things don't go where they want, but success didn't fulfill you the way you expected. Right? So, can you share with us what happens when you build everything and thought you wanted it and now you're like, I'm still feeling like something's missing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've thought a lot about that because it did put me in a very depressed state, and I'm not a depressing, I don't get depressed easily. Now, I'll take a
Mm,
sideways question and then answer your question directly. So, a sideways way of looking at it is how many people have you heard win the
mm,
lottery and destroy their lives?
mm.
So,
Too many,
the
and I actually know some of them.
what happened to me, this is a particular version of how that works, is I was told growing up, and because I was started out as a computer geek, I started at a young age doing programming and selling Apple II computers, so that'll age me a bit. And when I sold the company, I'd done everything I was told I was supposed to do. Everything that you're supposed to do is go out, work, maybe start a company, sell it, make a bunch of money. And it left me with the fundamental question of now what?
Mm,
Because I had blown every single goal I thought I was supposed to have.
mm,
And so what put me in the depressed state is I had no guideposts, no goals to move forward from. And
mm,
so identifying that, I came up with 3 goals, about 2 or it was a couple months into it. I came up with 3 goals that I'll never achieve fully. I could work on every day, and they have value, and that's
mhm,
fun, learn, and do neither at the harm or impedance of others.
mm,
Those 3 goals, I was able to start working my way out of that dark place and start looking forward to different things. And then what happened is I got hired at a bank in San Diego. I actually was hired as a VP for technology.
mhm,
And my boss that hired me, his name was Kris as well. In one of our discussions, he said, I'm an atheist.
mm,
And even though I have no problem with people wanting to believe anything they want to believe, it didn't sit right for me for him. And so I got really I dug in a curious way. And what I ended up finding is that there's 4 questions
Mm.
that you can ask anybody. And it doesn't prove whether you have a soul or not. But what it does show is that all the benefit is in believing
Mm-hmm.
we have a soul, and all the
Right.
downside is in believing we don't. And by asking him those 4 questions, it actually fundamentally shifted the way he looked at things, and then he went on. And that was the starting place of what started getting downloads basically from the source or whatever thing people want to believe in that gave me the pieces and the answers to build the book.
And I can't wait to hear those 4 questions. Of course, you did such a great job leaving us there like, "And what are they?" Because look, I got my pen out, and every now and then I try not to get my pen out because sometimes I believe it's a little bit of a distraction, but I was ready. I got my pen out. So, guys, get your pen out. We're going deep today, and we're not gonna sink you, but we promise it's gonna open up a portal for you to get in there and do some work with yourself. So here's a question I have for you because in your work, you talk about fear, and your work actually reframes fear, is how I look at it. Because most people run from fear. You say fear is a portal. So, what does this actually mean in real life in that theory? That fear is never heard of it before, but I'm liking it.
Great question. So, first, let's step back and say there's 2 basic kinds of fears. There's the one where the saber-toothed tiger is behind you and chasing you down the hill, and
Yeah.
you better run.
Yeah.
That's pretty simple. The second kind of fear is the one that's here. And
Mm,
that's the fear that we face daily, weekly, monthly. And that fear, if it's treated as a portal or a signpost,
mm,
you can take something that's stopping you and
yes.
turning it into a decision. Now, here's how that looks. I use this example because it's something that a lot of people resonate with. Let's say that I've been working at a job for 5 years and I really feel like I should get a raise, but I'm afraid to ask my boss for the raise.
Hmm.
Now, if I stop there, then I'm kind of frozen. I'm never going to ask the question. And I'm probably over time going to resent my job and resent my boss because that fear has stopped me. And it's hard for us to introspectively know that the fear is stopping us, not our boss and not our job, right?
Mhm.
Well, the first thing to do is to recognize that fear has hit. And the way I tell people to do that is that fear first shows itself in your body, either here or here.
Mm,
You'll feel a tenseness. You'll feel a shortness of breath. You'll feel things that get tight, right? When that happens, pause and ask 3 questions. First question is, what am I fearful about? Second question, how is it serving me today?
mm,
Third question, how does it serve me going forward? Now, by answering those 3 questions, it will probably open up some other questions like, am I doubting myself? Am I doubting my self worth? Am I fearful that other people aren't going to see my value or that I have imposter syndrome? I mean, there's an endless number of things we could talk about. But by asking the question,
mhm,
you now can say, okay, I'm afraid to ask my boss for a job because I think he might fire me. He or
mm,
she might fire me. Okay, well, what does that look like? Well, if I lose my job, I have to go find another one. I have to figure out how to pay my bills and so on and so forth. But by going through that process, if you watch or can feel what's going on, instead of being stopped in fear, I now have choices in front of me. I can now say, you know what? It's okay if I lose my job, but I need to ask because I need to get past this. It's
mhm,
okay if I have to go look for another job. It's okay. I've got enough money that for 2 or 3 weeks or a month or whatever, I can go look for a job. But what you've done is you've turned a place of mental frozenness into a place of decisions and choices that you
mm.
now control.
It's just good. Okay, we're going home. You guys don't need any more. But here's the thing, we just went 1. I used to be a swim instructor for a little while, and we would bring the kids in the water, and we would sway them. 1, 2, 3, up and under. So, guys, this is just the first one. We just went one. Here we go, two. We're going deeper. You also talk about remembering your inner truth. That sounds so powerful. But for some people, they might feel it's a little bit vague. So let's dive in. Let's make it practical. What disconnects people from their inner truth in the first place?
Okay, that's an easier question than the first one you started down. Um,
See, we're swaying.
so to answer what disconnects us,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try to keep it relatively short so we can dig in as we go. But the first part is the book is it's not designed to preach or tell you anything. It's designed where you follow Gabriel or Gabe through his life experiences and meeting his mentor Elias, who loves to ask questions. And in fact, the very first question Elias asks Gabe at the coffee shop when they first meet each other
Mm-hmm.
is, do you believe you have a soul?
Mm.
So when you ask what disconnects us, first off, you have to say, well, what does disconnection mean and look like? And so I'm going to take us down a real short path and we can dig deeper. But the short path is if we're souls
Mm.
and we're in the game of earth and there's certain rules we've agreed to, and some of those rules might be forgetting who we are and what we are in order to make the game more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain things in this game that take place that help separate us from what we are in order to make it more difficult. So, an example of that, how many stories have you heard where children who see ghosts are told by their parents that they don't exist, or you had a bad dream, or it's imaginary,
Hmm.
or you didn't see it? Now, why are the parents saying that? They're saying it from a place of love. They're saying it because they have been taught by their parents and their parents that the way to protect the child from fear of ghosts is to say they're not real.
They're not real.
Okay. But actually, in today's new way of thinking, that's actually a form of gaslighting, right?
It definitely is.
Now, okay, our parent, me as a parent and other parents, they don't do it to be
Right.
mean. They're doing it to
Right.
help.
But
But what is it doing? It's telling us that what we're seeing, experiencing, and feeling is not real and that we shouldn't trust it. And
mm,
it's starting us down the path of disconnecting from what's really going on
mm,
and starting to put the illusionary veil more solidly in place where we believe we're disconnected little people that don't have souls, that aren't connected, don't have a bigger story, don't have a bigger picture, and there's not a lot more going on than we're told.
got it, got it. But then we say Santa is real. So now all the things you feel, know, and sense in your own body, in your own self is not real. But what I tell you is, here's Santa. Here's, all this other stuff. So that is such a beautiful explanation. Now, let's, like I said, dig a little deeper. Do you think that it's conditioning? I'm pretty sure you're going to say yes, but success pressure, identity tied to the performance, and here's the real question: how do you rebuild that connection when you've ignored it for so many years?
The You asked like four questions there.
I know. I piled it up on you. I just that's the
So
under.
is it conditioning? I think the answer is absolutely yes.
Mhm.
But it's conditioning in two different forms. I think that the game and our turns in the game, which I consider to be lifetimes, are
Mm,
designed to be difficult and hard on purpose. So we as soul beings, which I consider us to all be co-creators in this, are
mm,
told to forget that. We're
mm.
told to be disconnected so that we don't achieve our turns and our goals and our turns quickly. The game is designed to be hard. Now, let me give you an example of that and then I'll move on to the next part of the question. Have you ever played tic tac toe?
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Can you
I'll
play it as
play
an
it with
adult?
myself if you let me.
Can you play it as an adult now
Yes, I do.
with other people?
Yes.
And how
Even
often?
kids. It's one of my favorite things to play with
Now, with
kids.
kids, I get, but what about other adults?
Not so much, because
How come?
they're yeah.
Why?
I guess it doesn't come up. I don't bring it up, and no one has brought it up, but it's always with kids. I find myself with kids and they're
Pretty
bored. I'm like, let's play
boring.
tic-tac-toe.
It's a pretty boring game as an adult,
I
right?
like it. Maybe that's
Well, I know
why.
it's
Yeah,
like
maybe
it. You
that's
like it with
why.
kids, right? But when you play with an adult, everybody knows that you can just play the X's and O's in a certain direction, and it's a draw every time.
And what about there's a board game that's similar. What is it called? 4 in a row?
I don't know. There's
It's like
there's
it's
probably a
red and
gazillion different
yellow,
games. Yeah,
but
I
you
don't know.
have to you put it in like a
You
plinko
drop
chip.
slots in? Yeah.
Yeah.
But tic-tac-toe is the best one to describe because once you understand where to put the X's and O's, you can always draw the game. Always.
Yes.
Period.
Yes. And I
So
think that's probably my obsession.
that's okay. My point of it is that as human beings, we typically play more difficult games like chess and Go, middle level games like Monopoly and Stratego and those things.
Right.
And the reason we do that is because they're more of a challenge, right?
Right.
Well, now if you take that idea from a human perspective and go up to a soul's perspective, I can bet you a soul is not going to pick tic tac toe to play. It's going to pick chess or Go to play. So now, if we say the game of Earth is a very complicated, hard game designed to keep us off track, then we have the situation where you ask the question, how do we get back in alignment? How do we remember who we are?
Mm.
And the
Mm.
answer is that we drop ourselves cheat codes all the time. Most people call them coincidences. I say there's no such things as coincidence. They
Me too.
all happen for reasons. And I'll give you an example of how that looks and works.
Mhm.
Since I first started going to coffee shops and restaurants as a young person, I'm talking like 14, 15 years old, I would be reading my book, doing some drawings, drinking my coffee, and some random person would pull up a chair, not even ask me, just pull up a chair, sit down, tell me their life story, tell me things that you would never even tell your best friend. We'd have a discussion. They'd get up, they'd walk away, and I'd never see them again. And this
Mhm.
happens all the time to me. All the time.
Twice to me. I've had it twice,
Now, it
2 major
happens, I mean,
times.
it happens, it even happened like last weekend. So it happens
Wow.
all the time. And so
Wow.
for the first couple of years as a young adult or teenager, I would look at this and go, what's going on here? This is really strange. Does this happen to everybody? And I'd be sitting in a place like a coffee shop and nobody else's, there's no other random sit downs. It's just my table. It's just me. And so then after a couple of years of this, I got very curious and started digging into it and saying, okay, out of all these situations, what's going on here?
Mm.
And what I found for every single time was that these people, every one of them needed to hear something I had to say, and I needed to hear something they had to say. And so what happened is those coincidences very clearly became acts of, at the soul level, we're already communicating. And then we agree to have a discussion, which brings us here. And then we have the discussion that we were meant to have based on an agreement we already made.
Hmm.
So that's a version of a small miracle that when we start seeing and paying attention to them for what they are, we start remembering pieces of ourselves. The
Mm.
reverse version of that, I was talking to a lady on a podcast a month ago. And she said, "Oh yeah, somebody just yesterday morning sat down on my table. And I was reading my book and I got really upset. And I was about ready to tell the person off and tell them to get out of my table. And she said, whatever happened, she stopped herself. And then the person started talking. And then she was getting really frustrated, but she didn't say anything. And then a couple minutes later, all of a sudden, the person said something that she absolutely needed to hear. And it
Wow.
shifted her entire perspective for the rest of the month. And
Wow.
what she learned from that was had she acted the way we're taught,
Mhm.
in the material world, which is that's my space. You can't sit in it. You're interrupting me. You're taking away from my time and starting to open up and listen to the universe that
Mm.
we actually get what we're supposed to get if we just learn to listen again.
Wow. Wow. That's just And so I'm going to peel back from where you are because you've been giving me these notes and I've been listening. And one of the things my mom taught us very early, and then I did it formally in the English language, and that's reading between the lines. So I've been listening to what you're saying and listening to what you're saying because somehow those are two different things. And if you know now, if you know, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your spirituality and your belief? Because I'm hearing you say, remembering, I'm hearing you say, choice when we're coming and negotiating our time on earth. Talk to us about your belief and your perspective on our existence on planet Earth as a human.
So that starts cracking the egg a little further.
Right?
Back when if you remember, I talked about coming up with 3 basic goals.
Right.
And then my boss and I came up with 4 questions that show all the benefit in having a soul. And it shifted his reality for him, but it left me with a fundamental question.
Mm,
We have a soul. What is it? What's it doing here? What's
mm,
its purpose? What are we? And
mm,
then and then I had 2 other, what I call it, the 3 legs on the stool that started me down the journey of writing The Infinity Within. The
mhm,
second leg on the stool was that my childhood, my dad was Baptist, my mom was United Methodist. We went to United Methodist, so I learned a lot from there. But I was
mhm,
really curious about religions, all of them, anything I could get my hands on. And so I studied Sanskrit, Egyptology, Catholicism, Gnosticism, Buddhism. I mean, I could go through a very long list. And what I
mhm.
found was that even though the semantics are very different,
Right.
the end stories for all of them kind of all end up in the same place. And
Yeah.
so that I found to be fascinating. So you asked me, what is my spirituality?
Mhm.
I'm going to summarize it using the Bible because it's arguably the most read book on the planet. But it
Right.
doesn't come just from the Bible, it comes from all the different studies I've done.
Yes.
But the Bible says some things pretty clearly. If you go to the Old Testament, it says it a lot more because the New
Mhm.
Testament got a lot of it filtered out, and we could get into a whole other discussion about that.
Well, that's yeah.
But the thing that comes out of it that I think is fundamental is chapters and verses such as, "We are the children of God,"
Mm.
where Jesus tells his disciples, "You will do everything I have done and much more." So, what if you take those chapters and verses and take them more literally?
Mhm.
What that's really saying is that Jesus wasn't here to be on a pedestal. He came here to say, "Hey, folks, wake up. Remember,
Yes.
you can do everything I'm doing right here in front of you."
Yes.
So now, great. That's the second leg. The third leg on the school stool is that also growing up since the age of 6 on, I think I had some things before 6, but 6 was the first really big out of body experience. And then I
Mm,
had multiple out of body experiences as well as multiple near death experiences, including one that could have easily been a full death experience.
mm,
And those things allowed me to see through the veil in a much larger way and look at the universe in a very different way than we're taught. And so with
mhm.
those 3 legs on the stool, I started down the line of, okay, let's take a leap of faith here and say that we're all gods. Okay, great. What does a godlike entity do? Like, do? I mean, they exist outside of space and time because this is just a construct. I can only come up with 3 things. They create stuff, meaning planets, universes, galaxies, whatever. They destroy stuff, and they play games.
That's what my thoughts are. Create, destroy, play games.
Great. So now, create and destroy, we don't have to spend a lot of time on. They're self
Right.
explanatory.
Right.
Play games. Great. What makes a game a game? I could only
Mm,
come up with 3 things that are required: playing pieces, turns, and rules.
mhm.
Great. Let's run with that. We have this thing called the planet Earth. It exists in a fourth dimensional universe, meaning that the primary motivator is time. What would a soul, an omnipotent being, find interesting in a fourth dimensional construct? And I could only come up with one thing.
I'm trying to guess. There's things popping around in my head, but I don't think.
Experience or experience emotion.
And isn't that the driving force that keeps everything lit or down or up? It's always emotion. Everything.
Everything is experience or experience.
Yes.
So if I'm a soul and I'm looking at this game of Earth and I say, this looks fun, I can go experience a bunch of things. I can go experience emotions. What do the rules look like? So I go
Mm,
to the pearly gates and I look in and I say, the playing pieces, well, that's going to be a piece of me. Turns are going to be lifetimes. And here are the rules. Let's look at rule number one. Rule number one says, when we come in to play the game, we agree to leave all of our godlike abilities out.
And Jesus is an example, if anybody is wondering. That was my thought.
So what does that look like? Well, if you and I sat down and played Monopoly and I grabbed all the money and all the properties, you wouldn't want to play again with me. It'd be a pretty
Yeah.
boring game. So
Yes.
that's why at the beginning, rule one is we put all that godlike stuff out. Now that
Yeah.
kind of handles the emotion and experience problem, but here's where it doesn't handle it fully. My favorite dog runs across the street, gets run over. I go, oh,
Mm,
I didn't like that. So I draw on my power, I change the situation, and I move on. So what that really means is with just rule one, even though I'll experience things, they're going to be pretty light experiences because anything I don't like, I'll
I
just change.
change it.
Right. In comes rule number two. I agree to forget I ever had.
Yeah.
However, rule number two, if you just have those two, creates a new situation, which is called an infinite time loop trap. And what that
Right.
means is that we would have a piece of us stuck in this game forever if we only had those two rules. And I'm betting as these beings, we probably wouldn't agree to trap a chunk of us inside a game construct forever. So in
Right.
comes rule number three. Rule number three is we have turns. And before we even enter the game, we roughly put together what we want to accomplish in each turn, in each lifetime.
Mm,
Here's where the fun starts. If we go through a lifetime and we get lost or we don't follow the path to achieve what we wanted to achieve, we get to do the turn over and over and over again until such time as we remember what we actually wanted to do here, do it, and then we get to move on to the next turn and the next turn and eventually leave the game.
wow.
Okay. Rule four, and there's four more beyond this, but you have to read the book to get the other four. But the fourth one is kind of important because one of the things that Gabe asks when Elias kind of goes through these ideas is he says, well, if it's a game, that's kind of frivolous. That doesn't sound like it's very important.
Mm,
And then Elias said, have you ever been to a soccer game in Europe or a football game in the US? Have you ever seen how serious those people, especially the Europeans, consider their soccer, their football games?
gosh, I'm from South America, the Caribbean area,
There you go.
and it's a riot.
It is literally a riot. I lived in
People
Milan.
are so divided for the seasons, like
Yeah. I
nobody's
lived in
business.
Milan for a year next to the Fiero, which was the big coliseum for the soccer games. And I knew a soccer game was starting that night because in the morning, there were buses filled with policemen in full riot gear arriving all day to get ready for the game. Okay. So what Elias says is it's a game with teeth. And the fourth rule says when we're inside, we're going to be 100% vested in the game. Okay. So now you kind of have a general idea of the construct that I've put together. And again, what resonates with all of you listeners and everybody, take what resonates and what doesn't, leave sitting. It's okay. Play along with the story and then see what resonates is how I've written the book. So what happens is if we're in this game, and again, remember we talked about the soul is not going to pick tic-tac-toe. So
Too
those
easy.
turns are designed to keep us off track, to keep us off our path. They're designed to throw material things in front of us. I need to have the next Rolex or sports car. I need to fight really hard to go achieve these things. I need to go do this and this and this, when our path might have been something completely different.
Mm,
And so what happens is, and what happened for me is I went completely into technology and computers, and it was fun. By the way, I still do it, right?
mm-hmm.
But what happened is when I succeeded, I'd blown all the goals that I was told as a material world construct person I was supposed to do, but it wasn't all part of my soul path. My
Mm,
soul path was still not being achieved, or maybe parts of it were, but not the next part. And so what
mm-hmm.
ended up happening is I got stuck. So now the reason I talk about remembering and how fear acts as a signpost or a gateway is that
Yeah.
fear and little miracles daily and bigger miracles that happen around us and to us, when we take the time to be curious about them and look at them,
Mm-hmm.
we actually start seeing the cheat codes that we're giving ourselves to get to the next level. And so what happens is that what I'm trying to give people is a way of saying, wait a minute, let's slow
Mm-hmm.
down a minute. Let's pay attention to those people that randomly sit at our table. Let's
Mm-hmm.
pay attention that when we see a ghost, it actually might be seeing a ghost. If we have an out of body experience, it might really be an out of body experience. For those people that have had near death experiences, I can tell you that I have yet to talk to a single one that hasn't significantly changed the way they look at life after one. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not suggesting to any listeners to go
To
do this
push to a near death
because I'll
experience.
tell you what, near death experiences call that on purpose. They're very black and white. It's either
Not,
near death or full death. There's no in
no,
between.
no gray
So
areas.
even though they do provide a very powerful look at things,
Mm-hmm.
they're not something I would suggest anybody goes out and looks for.
Right.
However, the softer way, there's a school in India that it came across my radar a couple months ago, 6 months ago. And what they're doing is they're taking kids and they have a like a needle on a board on the floor, and then they have a little cone of paper and then a glass thing sitting over it. And they're having the kids use their mind to move the paper and spin it. And what they're finding is that once you get past doubt that you can't, and I'm talking even 1%, you
Right.
trim away doubt and eliminate fear from the picture, you can actually start moving that paper pretty aggressively. And so
Mm,
they're already teaching their kids to reconnect and remember.
right. Right. So powerful. And I would say I've been on my spiritual journey with very similar beliefs because
Nice.
I've been the child who's been asking, but why? But if God, who made God? If God made heaven and earth, who made God? And this has got to be something bigger than this. There's got to be more to this. This just cannot be it. Like, do you believe, and this one is just totally as a follow up, do you believe some of us, as we return, my open gateway, by the way, in vulnerability, was I read A Return to Love by, her name just slipped, and she just ran for president in the last elections. But I used to ask all these questions. And so my next question for you is, do you believe that some of us recognize that, or some of us are maybe on maybe a closer end of our turns of playing the game, and we sort of kind of know, and we could also look at someone and be like, I could tell they're gonna have a few more laps of this because I'm one of those people. And the minute when I became that person that's probably what's happening. I started to look at everyone, and I think I woke up this morning specifically and I said, you know what? Because so many people come to me for a shoulder to lean on or for advice or wise counsel. Woke up this morning thinking, that's not what I need to do. I just need to listen and see what they want to do and say, go do it. Because here's the thing, I have never wasted more time trying to convince people because I'm able to look and see, here's your life path. I can see a path that's well illuminated for you, but you're not choosing it now.
And
And
there's
most part, they're not going to choose it this. I feel like now I'm in a space where they're not even going to choose it this lifetime, and I have no say-so on it. It's already been negotiated in some form or fashion, or they've chosen while they were here. And I'm not even going to waste my life source energy. Not because they're bad or stupid or anything. It's just because that's not what it's going to be.
There's a reason the old saying you can lead a horse to water exists.
Make them drink. And I realize I don't even have to try, because that is not what they're here for.
Well, they're on their own journey, doing their own thing, following their own path, or the game has caught them up in the game like it's supposed to, and they may not be on their path for a little while, so they'll do over a few times.
They'll be coming like this, and it's okay.
I've met a few people that have been in the game probably hundreds of turns.
Hey, Disruptors, what an amazing conversation with Kris Land. We're so happy that you joined us here. Just remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let us know that you're enjoying this episode, and hop right over to part 2. We'll see you on the inside.